Three, two, one. YouTube.com, Jamestown, California. Real quick, I'm in Anaheim, California. That's where I reside and I also work. And I'm at Carl's Jr. out of the drive-thru. And there's an area right here by the Home Depot where there's probably, I don't know, maybe like 10, 15 people kind of scattered out. You know, and the leaders say they really care about people and they care about us and this whole emergency. But when you see people flocked in that kind of filth and poverty, and literally I was looking for some coupons to give them so they can get like a buy one, get one free. And I couldn't find the coupons while I was pulling over to the side, and they just literally came to my car as if I had lived in a third world country. And I've been to a third world country, and I know what it's like. And I just really felt right there that I think a lot of the things I'm hearing from the Democratic campaign, it's not only twisted, distorted, and dishonest, but it's just not true. And the fact that we're in a national emergency, and I live in one of the nicest cities in all of California and of all the United States. And there's only so much the city will do for homeless people or people that don't have papers. Some of them, in that case, homeless and without papers, I think. And without jobs. That means without money. They were literally starving out there, or thinking I was going to give them a hamburger out of my drive-thru. I only got myself food. Maybe other people do get food, just give it to them. But that was a real sad scene, and I don't think I've seen anything like that in the OC in a long time. And there are some people that are more affected than others. And the Democratic platform, with this new ticket of percentage points and contributions of campaign money, they're just not being honest of what's caused some, at least, California poverty, in my opinion. California poverty meaning homelessness, rent that's really expensive, no areas for people to use the restrooms, and then the areas they do in the cities are full of drugs or whatever. It's a nasty, nasty compare and contrast situation that we live in here. And I'm just concerned that, you know, we sit there and we play games with people's lives on the news. And I think what I reported on my Twitter feed yesterday was quadruple the news that I watched on the networks that I watched the news on. And that's with all the shows combined, with all the best people that I like and watch or don't watch or missed, watch reruns. And I'm just concerned that I know what's happening. I know the news. I know what's going on. And you guys, especially in the Democratic Party, you're making this whole spectacle, this whole emergency into a political deal for you. And if you do win and you do become in charge while the emergency is still in place, I could only see what kind of crackdowns you guys would overly enforce on people while during the campaign. You are definitely instigating some of these looting in cities like New York, Chicago, Portland, Seattle, Minneapolis. Those are the big five. But I'm sure there's a lot of cities that this is happening and we're not getting any information on. And I'm going to start with a city by reporting from the Daily Republic here in San Diego County in La Mesa, California, that I'm reporting on the news that someone reported that their city council approved to hire a private investigating team from Chicago to investigate the looting that happened on May 30th in front of the La Mesa police station, and what their officers could have done better or differently, and also what led to going from a peaceful then to a violent and destructive protest. And by that city getting to the bottom of how it worsened and who is behind it is a first step. And I'm surprised that the news didn't either report on it, or you're not aware of it, or like I said, I get the news before the news gets the news, or you're not fast enough on reporting one city. I'm sure you'll get around to it. But what La Mesa did was historic, not only in my opinion, but in a news fact, because when they do get to the bottom of some of those protesters and how it got from stage 1, 2 to 3 and then all the way to destruction, and if there were anyone who paid those people or instigated to those people, and if they were involved in the government, in the councils or the city or outside the state, they're going to get to the bottom of it. Because I think some cities in California, they don't mess around with the residents' safety. They take that stuff very seriously, especially in cities in San Diego, Orange, other counties. I'm surprised Los Angeles is in this wanting to get to the bottom of it in their cities as San Diego does. But that's why, their news reports on the news the way they do, and the way we hear our news locally. It's just horrible. It's ridiculous. Especially watching Channel 7 News yesterday for that. All I do is pretty much use the remote control, see who's on, then I see who's on, and I change the channel. Because you guys have ruined my broadcast, top to bottom. There's nothing in that broadcast for me to like. And you guys don't give people the voice or the chance when they're capable, but you give other people the chance to broadcast the views that you want when they're incapable. And I see it in sports more and more, that this 1, 2, 3 punch just to get the spot, and then the other one to take the spot. It's just horrendous. And all our voices are just not being heard. That's what I have to say. And then today, and I'm not going to start criticizing Fox News, but I will criticize every single time I said I was tuning in things today. It seemed like the White House was either watching my website or watching theirs, because as soon as I tuned in, they crashed my news show. It was all 3 of them today. Horrible. Every time I'm tuning in, boom, another press conference. Boom, another briefing. Boom, another Biden campaign contribution. Or whatever, press podium. Horrendous, untruthful, dishonest. Dementia campaign. The Biden campaign. The fact that the percentage points went from 50 to 40, and now they're closing in at 46 and 46%. That's even now. It just depends on what state's going to go the other way. And then Joe Biden, I think that you picked a vice president of a state that you already won shows that your strategy is questionable, because you should have been looking at candidates from states that you might not have been winning, like in Pennsylvania to secure that city or state, or Texas, or take a chance on Florida, or a state that you would not normally win, but by putting the vice president of a leader that's already leading in that state, you would possibly win that state. But, I'm not going to question your judgment or how you decide who's going to be your running mate. But in my opinion, it's all about money. Who's going to bring you in the most money? Who's going to pay for the spot? Just like in journalism, just like in broadcasting. It seems like the administration is paying for the spots to take over those hours. And it's just horrible. I mean, Mr. President, if you're going to come on and do these briefings, 6, 7, 8 o'clock in the morning Pacific time, That gives you 3 hours Eastern time, 9 o'clock. That'd be fair. A 9 or 10 o'clock briefing. Instead, it's 11 o'clock, it's 12 o'clock, it's 3 o'clock. And, by that time, I'm already like, I don't even want to watch TV. I'm just trying to get the news to see what's going on in the world. Because I get the news before the news gets the news. It's just pitiful that the big broadcasting groups are just so limited. And I'm not going to blame people or individuals, because I know individuals are working the best and the hardest that they can. But there's a lot of information that was missed out yesterday. And you don't have to sit there and talk about all the crimes that are happening per city, because those are local and state news things to report. But when you're starting to get down to under 18 and the amount that it's occurring in, it is a national emergency in itself, the violence. And the only thing I want to leave this take at is, you people in Portland, I don't know what you're trying to prove by continuing to protest past a certain hour. You have all day to protest and then come back the next day at 8 o'clock. From 8 to 8 you could protest. But when you're going at 11 and 12 o'clock at night and you're drinking out in the public and whatever drugs are being used in the streets, you need to question, why are you doing this on 75 days? What does this have to do with police reform? What does this have to do with George Floyd? And you're already getting things that you want, like defunding the police with major cutbacks. So what do you want? At least somebody needs to report on what these groups want. Otherwise, do what LeMasa's doing. Crack down, and then you'll find out whether it's left or right, because then people are going to want to cut deals to save themselves in those fines and those community service. A lot of people right now owe tens of thousands of dollars by the destruction that they're destroying property. And if that happened here in California, I'm sure they would have them do community service. And to have the DA say we're not going to prosecute just tells the police, if you guys do arrest, then what are you arresting for? You just made their jobs and work obsolete, and that in itself is a breach of contract. And a recall election is not necessary, but a forced firing by the people versus those leaders that are doing that is the only means and course, because we're at 77 days. So the only thing I ask for Fox News, I mean, if you're not going to be able to report on the news all day, show me some scenes of some tear gas. I want to see some action. If these guys want to keep punking, well, let's see the punk come back. And I want to see it. I mean, they want to act like we're living in Syria when we do not live in Syria, and we're not going through what they're going through, and they're overshadowing what other world countries are going through, fighting for freedom, while we're sitting here trying to look like we're doing the same thing, asking for money from generations from 200 and 300 years ago, while everyone's working. Under the Trump administration, it was record unemployment for all age and ethnic groups, including men and women. And no matter if you agree or disagree, if you've listened to the Jamestown, California show, no Republican has been more critical on President Trump and his administration than me. No one. But I'm going to say it, during the administration with the economy, what the Biden campaign was saying yesterday, that he inherited that economy, none of that's true. It was a 3.5 year improvement, sustaining of the numbers, getting better for all groups. Unlike 8 years of the Obama administration, and the only growth was the last 6 months. It took him 7.5 years for 6 months of growth. And what's like even worse than that was during our national emergency, and I'm going to double check this number, that more jobs were created while there were 30 and 40 million people unemployed, that 10 and 15 million people went back to work, even though that's only half the people. That's still more than the jobs that were created during those 4 years of the Obama administration, when they had Susan Rice say that it was a video criticizing a video that caused the American embassy to get overrun and 4 Americans were killed there. Not even reported by the Chris Matthews media and Brian Williams. And then they criticize other people for reporting the news. I mean, really, we're going to leave the take right there. The problem with our economy is our news media is dishonest, but more than our news media being dishonest, our Democratic campaign is dishonest, top to bottom. And all these experts talking about these protests being peaceful after a certain amount of days, usually it's 1-2 days and then that's it. When it's going to 75 and 77 days and the police are asking for you to leave these certain buildings and you're just saying, no, we're not going to do it, you're basically asking for it. And if you're going to try to match strength versus strength, I'm just kind of concerned where this is all leading, and it needs to stop in Portland. It can't spread to Redding or San Francisco or other cities in California or in Seattle. It's just hideous that the leaders that are sworn to protect the residents that pay property and business taxes are not the most important people. And I don't know who's paying who. What I do know is when in the past, people that got in trouble or outcasts or law people that the California didn't want anymore, they went to Oregon for the last so many years. And then the same thing with Seattle. Seattle has been overran by businesses from the CCP since the early 2000s that I know. That possibly the whole city's owned by the CCP and their business groups and mafias. That includes legal and illegal. What that means is that's possible that the groups are putting on pressure within our cities, causing this. We have a national emergency that we seem to have been able to work through, and the economy seems to improve little by little. And the Democrats don't want to see that. They want as much chaos as possible up till Election Day. So by having these movements and these protests continue simultaneously while